If you're an Australian, you know that sound. It's that 5-cylinder, 3.2 litre Ford diesel engine that they produced for years and years between 2011 and about 2023. It went into Rangers and Everests and Mazda BT50s and probably other things as well. Meet Frank. Frank is our 2020 model Ford Everest Trend 4-wheel drive 3.2 litre, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that's what he is. And Frank is currently in his natural environment, which is pulling Bluey, the caravan, around Australia. Well, not all the way yet anyway. That video was taken in St Helens in Tasmania, and Frank lives in Bangalore in the Northern Rivers, so it is a fair way. Let's get on with finding out whether or not he's a monster. So, it's not just clickbait, it is actually a monster. For a start, it is built by cutting two cars in half and putting the front half of one and the back half of another together. So basically the Everest is the front half of a Ford Ranger and the back half of a Ford Territory. So I guess you could say it's kind of a Frankenstein monster, hence the name Frank. Also, he has a kind of a split personality, so a bit of a Jeckyll and Hyde, if you like. In some of his roles, he does a fantastic job. And in other roles, I think other vehicles would be more suitable. We can explore that in a little while, but in the meantime, let's have a look at the car. So, this is what it looks like. Two boxes, kind of rounded off at the corners, and it's got that tall boy look about it, and pretty much all you can say about it is that it's not quite as ugly as a Pajero Sport. This is a popular colour, grey. Other inspiring colours like white and silver were popular. There was a red one, which in my opinion looked hideous. And there's a kind of russety brown colour, but yeah, nothing that's going to make you think, wow, that looks fabulous. It's just rain, so sorry about that, but you can see the finish on the car, the paint and everything's pretty good, although this one had paint protection put on it when it was new. Usually probably a pretty good idea in these days. This is the Trend, so it has 18-inch wheels. I'll see heaps of these. It's got excellent LED headlights. And just while I'm at it, I'll show you the tailgate. It's got one of those electric tailgates, and when you wave your foot underneath it, it opens up. I don't know, is it a good thing? It's really annoying if you're trying to wash the car and you've got your key in your pocket because it keeps going off unexpectedly, so the go is to stick the key in the car while you're doing that. But yeah, it works fine. It has roof rails, a standard, got mirrors like elephant ears, and so while this trim level doesn't have blind spot monitoring, it doesn't really need it because it doesn't really have blind spots. I thought that would be a big deal when we bought the car, but no, it really doesn't need it. This car's been set up for towing, a new age caravan, and you can see, although the van has only got about 150 kilo towable weight, I have put airbags in it. But if you've got to blow your airbags up more than about, say, 15 pounds, you probably need to find another solution. It's got this thing out here which connects to the rear-facing camera, regular 12-pin plug, which is standard for on this car, and also it's got an Anderson plug on the bottom that keeps the house battery in the van charged up when you're towing. This car's done about 120,000 kilometres. It's on its second set of tyres. These are Maxxis kind of mainly on-road tyres, which are fine. The originals lasted about 70,000, which were bridge tyres. These were cheaper, and I think they're much better. These cars came in 4 trim levels. From the bottom up, it was the Ambiente. Who thinks of these names? The Trend, which is what this one is, the Sport, and the Titanium. The Ambiente misses out on some stuff that you probably want, like good headlights, rain-sensing wipers, and the leather interior, which is probably tougher than the cloth interior. The Trend seems to have a good mix of equipment. The sound system is perfectly fine, yeah, it was probably the most popular model. The Sport, they're not exactly sporty, was basically trim, some different colours, blacked out wheels, but it did have 20-inch wheels. And a lot of people that buy these cars don't want the 20-inch wheels. And then Titanium has stuff, really useful stuff, like a sunroof and chrome mirror caps and chrome door handles. It has the 20-inch wheels. And it's got, believe it or not, electric third-row seats that, kind of pop up out of the floor electrically rather than you having to pull the strap. Fair enough. I've put a link to the original brochure for this car in the description. So if you're interested in finding out exactly what stuff came with which trim level, that will tell you. Okay, let's have a look at the interior. Getting in's pretty easy, even though it's a tall car. You've got to have the technique, grab the handle, right foot on the side step, then just get in, even if you're a really old fellow like me. The front of the car is really comfy. We've toured a lot in this car and nobody's ever complained about a bad back. It has electric adjustment on the driver's seat, but manual on the passenger seat. It's spacious and you can adjust the seats to however you want them. Yeah, we like it. More than adequate. The back seat in this car is really spacious. And it is adjustable, so you can slide either side, the one-person side or the two-person side, back and forth, so that you can adjust the compromise between leg room in the second row and the third row. The outboard seats have ISO fix points. It's got this tricky armrest that the kids love to put their drinks in. It has climate control in the rear, plus you can control the air coming in from above in the second row and the third row seats. So this is how you access the third row. You grab this seat by the top, drag it forward, then you can see the third row. Just walk around the back, unless you have the titanium, in which case you push a button and then you just pull that up. Your third row seat's ready to go. It's got a top tether down here, but it doesn't have ISOFIX. So if you put 3, you could actually put 5 car seats in this thing in theory, but it wouldn't work, I don't think, because then you couldn't access the third row. But anyway, there are lots of configurations that you could use. Adults, do they fit in the back? Well, yes, at a pinch, but you wouldn't want to travel very far. Comfortable, really comfortable car for 5, at a pinch for 7. It has a standard set of instruments, digital on either side, analog speedo in the middle. If I just clear that thing. Yeah, then you can see that's been set to a digital speedo, but you can scroll through on the steering wheel various four-wheel drive modes. That's the one I like to use when we're towing because it's got a clear temperature gauge. Under normal circumstances, you don't really need to worry about that, and I'm sure it would warn you if it was getting hot anyway. It's got a good air conditioning system, 2-zone, and when you get wherever you're going, you're often surprised by the temperature outside because it's been so even inside the car. It seems to be a sealed unit, and has certainly given no trouble in this one. We plugged the phone in via this cable. I found the one down inside the tray here to be pretty useless. It glitches in and out all the time. And this one gives you fast charging. But also, if you plug into the cigarette lighter socket there, that gives you fast charging for a second phone, which is pretty handy. The infotainment system is the Ford Sync 3 system, which is actually not terrible. They do include some map upgrades if you get the thing serviced with them, but really most people probably just prefer to use the smartphone. One thing I should probably point out is that it has a really excellent reversing camera. It's not fantastic as far as the resolution is concerned, that's pretty average, but the camera is exactly in the middle of the car, which means that it lines up exactly with the tow ball, and you really have to make a second stab at lining the tow ball up. It's also got this button here, this plus button there, which gives you a magnified view. It makes it easier than any other car I know to hitch up. And I'm looking at you, Toyota. No head-up display. This car has aftermarket tyre pressure sensing, which should be standard in a car like this, but most people tow anyway, so you may be better to just get one from Repco like I did, because you can add in the extra sensors for the van then. Let's take it for a drive. One thing it does really well is country pubs. Possibly not quite so happy in these circumstances. So the surface of the road's deteriorated, and the car's big suspension travel, because it's a serious four-wheel drive, means that it kind of like lurches and wallows around a little bit on these uneven surfaces. It's probably no worse than most of its contemporaries, but I think you might find, or I might find, that this is a bit of a Mr. Hyde situation. There's no real excuse to include this bit of footage, but it was certainly a beautiful view in the Northern Rivers that day. This car's in its happy place on a divided carriageway, like most cars would be, of course, but it's a car that gives you confidence cruising even in fairly bad conditions, because it's big and heavy. It's sitting high, it's got good wipers, good lights, and it also has active noise cancelling in a thick windscreen, which is, I think, a feature that got dropped in about 2022. So it's actually a very quiet tourer. We're just at the beginning of what is probably going to be a tropical cyclone hitting us over the next few days. Bad enough already. Driving like this, fuel consumption is usually around about high 8s to 9 litres per 100 k's. The best we've ever seen, 7.9. A lot of cars do better, but it does weigh 2.5 tonnes, so I guess it's about as good as you could expect. The 2-litre engine probably uses a bit less in this kind of situation, but in the end, maths is maths and physics is physics and chemistry is chemistry. So in order to propel something this weight at this speed along the road, it's going to use a certain amount of fuel. So I'm a bit sceptical about huge differences between the 2-litre engine and the 3.2 in this situation. Let's take a look under the bonnet. One thing it's got that I thought was surprisingly cool is that you can do this, get your finger in the right place with one hand. The bonnet, big and heavy though it is, has gas struts. What we're seeing here is, admittedly fairly dusty, 3.2 litre 5-cylinder Duro torque engine. Nothing unusual, and really nothing much that I can explain to you in here. Except that this has been a very reliable car, hasn't missed a beat since we've had it, and 143 kilowatts, 470 newton meters of torque, and it drives through a 6-speed transmission. So I guess the elephant in the room here is, which engine do you go for? The 2-litre engine, the bi-turbo engine, was more expensive by $1,500 when it was new, and we chose to go with this car for that. That's one of the reasons it was cheaper. Plus the fact that in 2020, when we bought the car, the 2-litre engine hadn't been out for very long, and it just seemed that 150 kilowatts, 500 newton meters was a lot to get out of a 2-litre diesel, and I'm all for low stress. It's a 6-speed automatic, which I've always found to be enough speeds. The 2-litre car has a 10-speed automatic, and maybe one upmanship was the reason for Ford to do that, and maybe the engine has a very narrow torque band, so maybe it actually needs all those speeds to keep it cooking along. This thing seems to go fine. 2-wheel drive or all-wheel drive? Well, we didn't even consider the 2-wheel drive version of this car. It's lighter and cheaper, but I think that's about the only advantages that it does have. The 4-wheel drive operates like an all-wheel drive under normal circumstances, so it's rear-wheel drive and cuts in the front ones as it senses that it needs traction. But it does have also the added advantage of the low range and being able to lock up the centre diff and all that kind of stuff, which is a real advantage if you're going to do any serious off-roading or take it on the beach. We don't, but I guess it's nice to know you can. Unlike the Ranger, the Everest's got disc brakes on the rear, coil springs. Also unlike the Ranger, the Everest uses AdBlue. Let's talk about AdBlue for a minute. It seems that if you're a Ford Ranger, you're allowed to pollute more than if you're a Ford Everest, and that's because if you're a Ranger, you're classed as a light commercial vehicle, whereas an Everest is a passenger vehicle. Doesn't make any sense to me, but there you go. What AdBlue is, it's a solution of urea in water, which is injected into the exhaust, and it cuts down oxides of nitrogen, which are fairly nasty atmospheric pollutants. And I certainly wouldn't let it put me off buying one of these cars just because it uses AdBlue. In fact, I think it's a good thing. A lot of European cars use it. As long as you avoid buying AdBlue in plastic containers from the service station, where it's really expensive, or let your Ford dealer top it up, which is really expensive, go to a truck stop and buy AdBlue from the pump, where it's much more reasonably priced, maybe $2 a litre, and the tank holds 18 litres, which can last you 15,000 kilometres, so it's hardly expensive. You do, if you're going to use the nozzle at the truck stop, you do need to buy a little magnetic collar to go over the nozzle so it'll pump AdBlue into your tank, which you can get from most bargain stores like Autobahn, or you could borrow them from the servo. But I think it's courtesy to get out of a truck lane as fast as you can if you're in a servo. If we're going to talk seriously about towing, it's really a whole other video. So to keep it short, as far as we're concerned, this car is really suitable for towing. As long as you keep your weights right, it does a terrific job. Our caravan has a 2.2 tonne tear and an ATM of 2.8, and the car has a maximum towing capacity of 3,000 kilos. So even if the van was fully loaded, it would be legal. We are careful to keep the van's weight as low as possible, and it would very rarely go over 2.7. Our fuel consumption sits between 15 and 16 litres per 100 k's, and we would try to cruise with a speedo indicating maybe 96 or 97, which would be a true speed of probably 94 kilometres an hour. We're really careful to be courteous to other traffic, especially trucks, and they're usually really courteous to us. So as far as we're concerned, the van tows really stably behind this car, and I think it's an ideal vehicle for towing. As well, because it's a 4-wheel drive and it has a low range, if we do happen to get the van into somewhere kind of a bit gnarly, it's really easy to get it out with the engine really going above idle to pull it up a steep little grade off-road or something like that. And so, yep, I would definitely recommend this car for towing, but I would not recommend it if you were going to try and pull anything heavier than our caravan. You need a heavier tow vehicle. And really, a caravan that weighs more than your car is, in my opinion, asking for trouble. Let's get back to this fairly laboured metaphor, I'll admit, about whether or not it's a monster. It's not, of course. It's great. It's just that, in some roles, it seems to me to do a better job than it does in others. So, for example, it's great on dirt roads, it's great in bad weather, it's great for towing for our purposes, it's terrific on the highway, and it carries heaps. What maybe it doesn't do so well is its fuel consumption around town, especially in modern terms, is pretty ordinary. It's awkward around town. The backseat comfort isn't fabulous, especially if you've got airbags done up. People jiggle around, and a lot of people actually note that it's much more comfortable on the back of our Mazda 6 than it is in the back of the Ford, even though the Ford's got more space in it. And it does rock and roll. So if you're going over a speed bump, or the road is uneven, particularly at low speed, the car does tend to, it feels as if it's wallowing around. It probably isn't really. It's really quite controlled for what it is, but there you go. So I think if you were going to buy the car to take the kids to school, go to the shops, maybe better with a people mover. But for the purposes that we use it, we absolutely love it. And of course, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but he's not an oil painting. I was looking for a used one of these. What would I look for? The most important thing, in my opinion, is service history. You'd probably avoid something that had underbody damage, and I would probably avoid something that had a lot of off-road mods on it. I don't think I would want a bull bar on it. Certainly wouldn't want a snorkel. They're supposed to be able to wade 800 mils of water, and if the cyclone that we've been going through has taught us anything, I wouldn't even think about going through any water anywhere near as deep as that. If you've got this far, it must be pretty clear that I'm not a mechanic. I hope it's helped. If you just want to have a bit more information about these cars, or maybe you're thinking about buying a second-hand one, this has been a project that I've worked on while sheltering from the tropical cyclone, our former tropical cyclone, which is now just producing a bunch of rain here on the Northern Rivers. And yeah, I just want to thank Jan for supporting me and helping me out, putting up with me while I've been doing this. And as I said, hope you've enjoyed it. Anyway, bye.